We're going to take you through what Dell is doing around NIST2 and all of the security services that we're involved with. I'm just going to check one last time if Simon is on.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Good midday. My name's Simon Contini. I'm the Dell Global Services Field CTO for BCDR and Cyber Recovery. I have with me one of my colleagues, Joan Byrne. She's the Dell EMEA Security Services Field Marketing Manager. And we're going to take you through our NIST2, why and what, and we'll have questions at the end. Okay, thank you. So, NIST2, there's a number of different technical measures that are part of this standard. And, this is a list of some of the key starting points, which we're going to talk about in this presentation. Risk analysis, incident handling, business continuity and crisis management, supply chain security, security network information systems, vulnerability handling and disclosure, and also assessing the effectiveness of your cybersecurity and risk measures. One important thing to note about NIST2, it's not just about security, it's a very important factor, and it's great that that's finally part of the fore and part of this regulation. However, also conventional critical outages are also part of this standard, not to be often forgotten. So reporting obligations. So this is a really important factor for many organizations need to remember that there's some strict SLAs which NIST2 enforces, where you as an organization would have to provide evidence as requested, say of reporting, of testing, etc. And I'll talk about incident management separately in a few slides, but this is just really important to understand. You've got to have the information available, something that many organizations struggle with, today, and that's something that Dell can help them with. So information sharing arrangements. Entities are required to submit information to competent authorities. The idea of this standard and with ENISA is so that it can be a great means of sharing information and knowledge between different like-minded organizations across different EU states, so that as a whole, all of the organizations can improve their supply chain and their own resiliency. As we all seen from COVID, etc., we've seen how fragile that the supply chain was and the effect that it had upon us all. So Article 21 of the Directive is a really key area. This is where we start as Dell when we're helping organizations through this. And I listed out some of the areas and some of the things that we look at, and I highlighted them. I won't read through them all, but obviously incident handling, incident management is super, super important. Your policies and procedures and making sure that they are effective are also important, and making sure this is, all sustainable and that against, risk management measures, etc. Other important aspects such as awareness training for users, and other cyber hygiene practices are critical, as well as HR access controls and policy and asset management. So these are often the areas we start to talk about because it can be quite daunting for organizations. So we try and soften the blow by helping introduce them. I mean, it's not about the destination. It's about going on a journey with our customers, something that we do understand. When adopting a standard, it's a big struggle knowing where to start. I mean, here are just some of the various articles that we have in NIST2. It's not them all, just some of the key ones, etc. And we've mapped all of these to our resiliency and security services, which includes cybersecurity, data protection, IT BCDR, and ransomware recovery. So we've mapped these different articles to our different services to really help super boost or help customers really get started and prioritize on their actual data needs. So I'll pass over to Joan. We're going to flip between each other during this presentation to keep it interesting. So over to you, Joan.
Thanks, Simon. So really NIST2, it helps the overall strengthening of the position of the CISO and the CIO. It's the relationship between the strategy of the CISO and the other strategic stakeholders And it's critical to ensure that the technical stakeholders of the CIO are aligned. And that's what these regulations help to do, both DORA and the NIS2. The NIS2 regulations, they help to strengthen that role, and it compels everybody to be in alignment with what needs to happen. So if you go to the next slide, it's all about how to start. If we go straight over to the next slide there, what we've outlined here is some of the areas that Simon and Marco we have talked about that, where it's around risk analysis, it's around incident handling, which is the prevention, the detection, and the response to incidents. And then as well, the supply chain security, that's vast. That's a broad area that includes everything from physical threats to cyber threats, from protecting transactions to protecting systems, and for mitigating risks with parties, third parties, and third and fourth, and even those end party relationships. Then we have the security in network and information systems, which is the acquisition and the development and maintenance. It's all about making sure that the configurations and patch management and overall network is at its most robust level of security. You have the policies and procedure, which is around the testing and the auditing. So that's much like ISO, which is you need to develop the right processes and procedures that help to test and make sure that everything works and is in place. And you have those audits as well to make sure that that happens and to identify possible risks. You have basic cybersecurity hygiene practices and training. And again, that is also like the ISO. You need to ensure that everyone in the company is up to date with best practice behaviors and that they're trained to the level that ensures that the right behaviors are acted upon at all times. And you have the policies and procedures. That's around the use of the cryptography and the encryption, and the human resources security, which ensures that policies are in place around the access to control to data and the asset management. And then lastly, you've got the use of multi-factor authentication, and that's around zero trust. It's around authentication and making sure that those people have access at the right time to the right levels throughout. Next slide. So the response and recovery piece of this is all around the policies in place for business continuity. Once that policy is agreed, conducting a business continuity analysis of the exposures that may be in play at a given time. And that is with levels of risks associated with each. So you list out the exposures along with the priorities and the effect on the overall business continuity. So essentially what it tells you is what needs to be fixed most urgently to align with that policy that you have in place. And then you test the continuity plans and the responses. And a minimum would be annually, but it really should be done more regularly throughout the year. And it helps as well to identify the people and the functions that will implement those changes. And Simon, back to you.
Thank you. So aligning, we've got a number of different services at Dell for our customers, and we align to various different standards. ISO 22301 as well as 27001 are two of the international standards I'm sure many people and organizations are familiar with. We also align with some of the world's leading, well, the world's two leading institutes, the Disaster Recovery Institute International, the DRII, and the Business Continuity Institute. So we're able to help customers on that a full end-to-end journey in business continuity management and in information security management. So I've shown you up here the business continuity management program, and really, you know, Dell's approach is to really take an ICT method, though we didn't create NIS2 or DORA, but it's very, very good because it aligns to our whole approach of being very infrastructure and client edge, you know, aligned. And we you know, what I've shown here with the PP1, you may see in the slide up to PP6, the professional practices of the Business Continuity Institute's Good Practice Guide. and that we also align to the 10 professional practices of the DRII as well. So this all helps organizations have a sustainable, measurable, business continuity and information security capability. So one of the key services that we have is called Resiliency Program Management. And this is to help customers from data protection to ransomware recovery. In Dell, we call that cyber recovery, to IT BCDR. And we help, and we have been helping recently since the inception of both DORA and NIST2. Organizations go on a journey, and we do that in a number of different styles. We've got an improve and enhance and transform offer. And what they enable you to do is to either become enabled yourself as an organization, or for us to help you build that capability, or for us to also run that for you. And we have many examples of all the different possibilities with lots of different customers around the EU. Back to you, Joan.
Thanks, Simon. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through this entire slide, read all of the text, but really it's around crisis and incident management. And what I want to take you through in the next couple of slides is what we do for our customers around crisis and incident management, and give you a flavor of some of the services. So next slide, please. So what we're showing here are two services that we provide today, which is Incident Recovery Retainer Service and Incident Response and Recovery. And I think it's best if I talk to you first about the reactive offer. That's one that our customers use us for on an emergency basis, if and when they are actually attacked. And that's where they can contact Dell, and we will work with them immediately to go through what's needed to get them set back up and running, what number of hours are needed, what skills are needed. We have the expert help on hand immediately to respond to those customer needs. So that's very much a reactive offer. Everybody would hope that, you wouldn't have to use that reactive emergency button, but sometimes it happens and preparation isn't in place. So you need that response from Dell experts. Another piece, which is a little bit more reactive, which is rather than waiting for the emergency, it is to actually retain Dell expertise. In other words, if a customer is actually attacked, then we're ready. We have already spent time with the customer on a 40-hour basis to do an assessment of the existing disaster recovery plans. And we would work through the infrastructure, prepare the response in case of a cybersecurity attack. We would review the disaster recovery plan, if that's available. We would review the data backup and recovery capabilities and the overall recovery plan. And we would identify what possible gaps are in play at that given time. And we will provide our customers with a report showing what those gaps are and what needs to happen to remediate. So that's us getting to know the actual system and the network and the infrastructure. And then thereby, if the customer is attacked, then they can initiate us for either 120 or 240 hours of reactive time, where we will then kick in to the incident response and recovery. And that's a much faster way because we already will have knowledge about the actual infrastructure and network. So that's where we are retained if needed. And if in the case during that contract, if those hours of recovery are not needed and no attack has happened, then those hours can go into more proactive play towards the end of the contract, where we can help out on more proactivity on the system. So that's a really good service. And the next one is really around what we're doing at a glance. It's the incident response and what we have both within our hardware and our software and our services. It's around image deployment, monitoring and threat hunting, We have forensics capabilities in place. It's around networking and firewall within that, and the AD email system restoration. We also have that help desk rapid stand-up, and we have virtual CISO services whereby we can help our customers from a virtual perspective, acting as the CISO and helping out with anything that needs to be done around those responsibilities. And then the forensics, it's around digital forensics and data discovery, and our drive sanitation and recovery, as well as the encryption and the forensic preservation. I think it's back to you. No, it's not. It's still with me. So this is just a visual of the steps taken to better understand what happened and document it for compliance and legal requirements, which is very key to NIS2. Whether a cyber attack or a breach of a data privacy law, forensic analysis of what happened is key to fully understand and remediate the issue and reduce the risks of it happening again. So in the case of a ransomware attack, there are cases where we can recover previously encrypted data without the customer having to pay the ransom. So knowing what specific ransomware variant has impacted the customer would allow the teams to further investigate and determine the potential path to recovering those files. So this is just a visual of all that's involved there. And then this one is around backup policies and procedures. So NIS2's need for good business align backup policies that ensure the protection of the critical assets, that's the data, in accordance with NIS2 compliance articles. So Dell Technologies have numerous consulting services which help align maturity of people, processes, and architecture in accordance with the NIS2 and wider industry best practices. And the other good thing about the Dell consulting services and a lot of our standard service offerings within cybersecurity is that it is product agnostic. Okay, so back over to you, Simon.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to take you through our ransom recovery solution, which, as I said earlier, we call it CRS, or Cyber Recovery Solution. But one thing I will say is, on the incident response, we do have a number. I can't obviously state names for NDA reasons, but we have a number of customers, really, really large customers, that are currently using the reactive service at this moment in time. So it does get used by small and large companies, and it really does help them. The practicing of it, obviously, in the proactive service is obviously more beneficial, but even some of the largest organizations, about knowing where to start and coordinate, they do struggle still. So something that all organizations will have to perfect as they go on the journey of NIS2 and with DOOR. So anyway, back to our ransom recovery solution. This is a solution that we developed back in 2014. I was fortunate to be one of those that was contributed to the development of it. And that was just on as some of the, I call them the foundational attacked organizations, Merck and Maersk Oil. They're all in the newspapers, so I can say them. It's public information, and we all know Sony Pictures. So based out of that and our work with those organizations, we developed this service. So I think we're 10 years this year, roundabouts, nearly exactly. And we have a huge amount of maturity in this, and we are agnostic in whatever technology is there. We make sure we cover all of the major backup vendors, etc., and technology platforms when we provide this. So when we're looking at NIS2, we take a 3 lines of defense model, because one of the things the article calls out is isolation and separation, physical and logical isolation. So what we do is we create lines of defense from your operational we'll call them production backup systems, and we put that into a separate network area where we control from inside that vault, the opening of that, we'll call it an air gap. We take that backup data, which is data not in execution. It's what we call dormant. It's at rest. And we're then able to do analysis on it. We're also we're able to, quite often, we assume it could be impacted and have potential destructive cyber effects on it, such as ransomware, etc. And we're able to identify those files or information sets that could be affected. And we're able to we've got a tool as well where we can undertake artificial intelligence analysis, pattern recognition and machine learning to really super enhance and speed up, because it's all about the speed of recovery. And then obviously we tie this again with the third line of defense of being able to provide status information out in a secure way, often using single directional communications devices to your SOC or a central SOC security operations center. So our software is fully automated in the control of this, and we've had that now evolved for many, many years, a decade nearly, as I said. And that I'll show you the reference architecture now. So this is our reference architecture. So we have on the left, we've got the data center, and in the middle, we'll call it the air gap. And inside the cyber recovery vault, we have our software, which controls that switches opening and closing of the port to receive the backup data. And then once it's inside the vault, we're then able to create copies, do analysis, and then that's enough for some customers. And obviously it's all a journey about prioritizing what data is most important. We never try to give anyone a big bang approach. It's always about the journey, not the destination. And of all of the customers we've provided this even before DORA and NIST too, it's a matter of they want to see it working and see how it benefits them and then decide how they want to grow that along the way. So for our more advanced customers, we also have in our architecture a landing zone and a clean room and a minimum viable company that are all protected areas. So if you think of COVID and how we all had to, stay away from each other and clean our hands, put our face masks on, we have further network zones within the vaults that are secured from each other so that we can test and analyze the data, so we can eradicate the virus, the ransomware in most cases, and other forms of disruptive ransomware attacks. So I hope that helps everyone. And in that, we also provide monitoring and reporting and ultimately take the data back into the data center once those production systems have been cleaned and prepared to receive the assured and clean data from the vault. So as an easy way of looking at it, we first scan. Once we've got the data in the vaults, we've opened that air gap. We're then able to perform a number of different analytics and analysis using our tool, and we repeat this. And that data in the vault is locked, and no one can unlock that data. We call it immutable. It's in this too. There are words that point you to that effect, that you need to secure that data in the vault and be able to preserve it. You even need to be able to preserve the infected data as well, maybe for legal reasons, so that forensics can be done on it afterwards, etc. Until you even have to preserve it even after you've potentially put the data back into production. So lots of considerations that we've matured around that, many people wouldn't think of, and that allows us to do that investigation and forensics at the end. So, when it comes to NIST 2 and what it's trying to get us all to do, which is to improve our readiness for all different types of resiliency events. Obviously, I'm talking about an actual threat, that being a disruptive cyber attack, aka ransomware. But we all want to optimize. The end goal that business wants is the minimum time to restore. And with basic data protection, the bad actors, the ransomware criminals, they don't come and show you that they've attacked until they've almost done a risk assessment themselves of, I've been in the environment for 6 months as a criminal, and I've spent all of this time and effort. I've got 20 people working. We have not been paid a penny. So have we really made sure that this customer can't restore before we show them and we activate the ransomware? So you've got to sometimes get in the head of the criminals, and part of designing this solution, we've tried to do that. And so we've got basic data protection. Obviously, having the cyber analytics and the restart room enables us to isolate down to sometimes the file, and obviously those clean room landing zones enabling us to test really allows us to get your data back quickly, and that's key, because time is money. If your reputation, fines, been unable to operate. You know, often it can have human impacts from utility companies, communication companies, logistics companies, etc. So there's a lot of different effects, and that's one of the key things we look at. Some other really important areas to actually look at as well are the critical data. It's not just about protecting applications and critical data. You have a lot of other information, and I'll leave, because we're sharing these slides, I'm not going to go through them all. They're there for you to read and something we want to share with everyone. You know, beyond applications, you've got to think of intellectual property, your recovery plans, your access lists in some form that you can read, you know, identity management, AD, LDAP, and your other aspects of, you know, your other information on your licensing information, your contact information. There's so many other aspects, your build materials for your servers, your applications, and your gold images for the servers and for your laptops, for example. No one can afford to sit and install your laptop with all your organization's unique software and configuration one by one. You need to protect that. Some of the things that we found over years of doing this, that often organizations, when they don't involve Dell, miss many of these items. So one of the key styles in which we engage is we engage with the view of building consensus. We will never know your organization's ins and outs. You know how and why you operate your organization. We bring our expertise and we take you on a journey of building consensus and being able to give you insights with our vast experience. We're able to do this quickly. We enable you as part of one of the critical items in this too is to identify the critical data, prioritize protecting that first, you know, creating that roadmap, being able to show the regulator that, hey, I've protected these critical elements. I've got a plan in place to do the rest. This is very, very important. We've got our runbooks for cyber attacks, for, you know, data protection, for ITB-CDR and ransomware recovery as another strand of disaster recovery. We have a detailed methodology for doing this that we have our teams undertake, and we enable our customers to take that away so they can build it themselves. And one of the other critical services that's very, very popular with customers around the world that I see from my global role is our ransomware readiness assessment, doing like kind of a vulnerability assessment specifically focused on ransomware. I mean, we have a vulnerability assessment as well. This is really key for trying to identify, you know, some of those potential weak spots, you know, and as you can see, storage backup, remote access, looking at your risk assessment scenarios, how you're monitoring, and that response plan just enables customers to be stronger. Something that one of the items in NIST2 kind of points to more frequent vulnerability assessments, ransomware assessments, penetration, red team, etc. types of assessments on a regular approach. And we follow a number of the NIST cybersecurity framework and the risk management framework as well. And we often use the MITRE ATT&CK framework as one of the methodologies that we align to, which gives a really strong and would demonstrate with NIST2 articles a great level of maturity for your organization. So, I mean, I can't emphasize enough, it's about conducting regular security tests and audits and disaster recovery, ransomware simulations. The more mature you get, the more ready you are, as Joan echoed earlier on incident management. This is one of the key areas. So, you know, and, you know, one of our attack, we do have an attack simulation service. This is just an example. I'm not going to read through everything because I don't want to bore everyone, but you can see we have a number. This is just a couple of different views from an area approach, the service approach, and the common deliverables as part of that service that we have. If you want to know more, you can reach out to myself, Joan, or Mateus. So, and in conclusion, from my side, I would say that, you know, NIST2, I want to let Joan talk about SecOps environment in a second. It really brings together a number of different elements. You've got incident management, you've got ITB-CDR, you've got ransomware recovery, you've got cyber security and data protection, and all of that wrapped around testing, exercising or validation, whatever you may call it. So, Joan, I was going to hand back to you to talk about SecOps.
Yeah, I know we've gone over time, so I'm very, very quickly going to just close off. This is just a visual of one of the reasons, or many of the reasons, why NIS2 and DORA and other regulations are coming into play. It's because the threat environment is ever increasing, and we need consistency around overall security for everybody. So 20,000 plus vulnerabilities were discovered in 2021. That's actually gone up, obviously, since then. I think it's at about 23,000. 1,185, the number of phishing attacks organizations are remediating each month. So that's around making sure that vulnerabilities are detected, that configurations are kept up to date, that patch management is done, that overall is in line with the NIS2 compliance. I won't go through the detail here because I know we've gone over time. Thank you for your time. And it's just a reiteration of the fact that Dell can help out in all of the areas of cybersecurity, from the planning, the strategy setting, the policy setting, and right through to recovery. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you very much, everyone.